opening up a bunch. Geez, they blew me away. The minerality and their ability to age.
Oh, yeah, but the Rieslings from this region are pretty good, damn good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the loam soil that seems to define the Riesling structure? Is that the sort of secret sauce when it comes to Rieslings?
To be honest, I don't really know what causes it, because you get really good Rieslings from the Parongarups and from Mount Barker, and strangely from Frankland, but not particularly good from Denmark. and I don't get that, because you look at the, as a geologist, you look at it, and to me, it's like granite, clay, gravel. That's it. And that seems to be all over the place. So why would that be very different? Why would it cause such different flavors? Different Riesling blocks on the same vineyard can be so different.
Well, I remember once spending a fair bit of time in Centre Otago, and I remember experiencing that as well. If you just look at that, just coming up off the Bannockburn Road, that maybe there's 6 wineries with Riesling on that soil, and admittedly, it's very steep, so that's going to define flavor. But you'd like to think the glacial wash is pretty standard off that mountain. But geez, every single one is different, really.
It's completely different. Yeah, it's completely different. I don't really understand it, to be honest. And it's not really winemaking. As I understand it from talking to the winemakers, Riesling is pretty damn easy to make.
Yeah.
The grapes come in, you ferment it. You clean it up, you
get to go,
and off you go. And so you can have it's harvested in March and it's in the bottle in June. It's in the shops in July.
Well, we're on 7 o'clock. Let's kick it off. I'd like to thank you for coming, Steve. Really terrific of you to join us. I've got to say, doing the research for tonight was really eye-opening, as I mentioned to you before we kicked off. I think for me, this particular area of Australia is so fascinating for me for Riesling and Pinot in particular. Just cooler than Margaret River to the north, a lot more interesting. And a fact that I really didn't know until quite recently, it's the largest wine producing region in Australia. I would have called a bunch of others before Great Southern, but there it is. So congratulations on your 5-star rating this year from James Halliday. Maybe I'd like to ask you to clarify, what is a Red Star Award from Halliday? Because I see you've received that 7 years in a row.
7 years in a row, yeah. Well, you have to have a certain number of wines above a certain rating,
right?
For I think 3 years, and then you get what's called a Black Star,
right?
Or 5 Black Stars. And so you have to do that for like 3 years. It's something like 4 wines or 3 wines over 95 points. It's something like that. So it's quite strict, actually. And then once you do that, then the next year you still have to do it again, but you have to repeatedly do it.
Oh, okay. So if you don't attain it, you fall back again. Is that the?
You fall back.
Okay.
Yeah. Allegedly, you do fall back. Yes. We haven't fallen back. We've just maintained it. But it puts us in the top 10% of wineries in Australia.
Yeah.
And that's what I was told by Halliday anyway.
Well, that's a hell of a achievement. Congratulations for that. So do I understand correctly that Rockcliffe Wines has been running for 7 years only, and you were contracting fruit originally and you took over?
No, that's not quite right, Robert. The vineyards here in Denmark were planted 29 years ago.
Right.
And at that time, it did not have its own winery. It was made under contracts locally. But I bought it 19 years ago.
Right.
And I continued to make it under contracts, but I found that the vineyard was better than the winemaking. And I tried to get the contract winemakers to make it better, and they didn't seem to want to do that. So
if you want a good job done, you do it yourself, I guess.
Well, yeah, but I thought, okay, I can do 3 things. I can find another contract, but if I did that, then I've got the same problem. I thought I could go and lease a winery which I looked at one.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't have the right tanks. You know, you have to have the right types of tanks to make what we wanted to do. And then the other option was to build one. So, and somebody told me that it wouldn't cost that much money, but unfortunately it cost 10 times what they said, so, which was unfortunate. But, you know, we built it, and what we did is we specifically built it with small tank sizes. And so it's the only winery in this region that has that. And so we can make small batches. We don't have to stick all the grapes in one tank. You know, we can make lots of small batches of wines, and then we can make them and then blend them later if we think that that's the most appropriate thing to do. So that allows us to make much better, smaller amounts, admittedly, but make much better wines.
So if you were to differentiate yourself from your elder sibling in the North Margaret River, are your vineyards further inland in relation to river vineyards?
Well, you see, this is a very good question, of course, because I think Margaret River is it's very interesting, and it's okay. Everybody knows it, and everybody wants to go there. Mm. But in my personal view, they only make world-class Cabernet. Whereas the Great Southern, as you rightly said in your introduction, is the biggest wine producing region by area in Australia, mainland Australia, because Tasmania is bigger. And so the interesting about
yeah, we've lost you.
What have you lost?
We've lost your video. Let's do a. Yeah, you're back.
Am I?
Yeah, you're back.
I don't. I mean, I'm not doing anything.
Oh, we'll blame Telstra. It happens all.
Yeah, we'll blame whatever.
I blame Telstra even when we're talking to Italians. It's no problem.
Yeah. Anyway, so the interesting thing there is, because it's such a big area, and because the southern part of it is actually like where we are in Denmark, is actually on the Southern Ocean, whereas Margaret River is on the Indian Ocean.
Right.
So, and Margaret River has a 10% of the area that the Great Southern has. And so it's a relatively small area, but it has a much bigger production. So there are many more vineyards across it. But the point is, it doesn't actually vary that much because it's such a small area. Yeah. So yes, you do get exceptionally good Cabernet because that small area makes really good Cabernet. It does. I mean, you can't really fault it. You know, and they do make reasonably good Chardonnay. But the problem that the Great Southern has, it didn't do its marketing particularly well, but it's getting much better at it now. And what happens, because of this massive area in the Great Southern, you get cool climate grapes in the south, i.e. Pinot and Chardonnay, again, as you said in your introduction. But as you go further north, it gets warmer and warmer. You go up in altitude. You go up to about, I think, Mount Barker or Franklin, which is 50 kilometers away and 100 kilometers away, respectively, from here. That's 350 meters above sea level. Down here in Denmark, we're 10 meters above sea level.
Right.
So you've got not only a distance away from the ocean, but you've got an altitude. So when you get to Franklin produces world-class reds. So it produces, world-class Cabernet, world-class Shiraz, and anything else, Tempranillo, Merlot, Malbec. It's world-class. Well,
on that note, Steve, I'd like to encourage everyone to have a sniff of this Riesling, and I'm going to see.
Oh, the Riesling.
Yeah. And I'm going to see if I can figure out this video. I was very proud of myself. I discovered
the
video that I wanted to use.
Everybody should be having a drink.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because otherwise I get a bit bored with us talking.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd bang on all night about Riesling if I could.
Yeah, it's very interesting, this Great Southern thing.
Oh, I can't access it. Sorry, Steve. We're going to have to rely on your witty conversation. This is a new computer.
The video's not working. I'll keep going until we get the video.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about this Riesling while I fiddle around. I think that for me on the nose, Orange is definitely a big thing, sort of floral orange, and then maybe some apricots. I like to imagine that there's a bit of saltiness about it, but that's my obsession with proximity to ocean. And I wanted to ask you if that in any way defines what's coming out of that Riesling.
Yeah, I think partially it does. The only thing that I will say to that, Robert, is the grapes for this came from Marbacka. They didn't come from Denmark.
Right.
Now I have this thing which is strange. Riesling is regarded as one of the wines of the Great Southern, and the Great Southern, because it's so large, is split into 5 sub-regions, and those are Denmark, Albany, Porongarups, Mount Barker, and Franklin. All of them produce Riesling. It doesn't matter whether it's the warmer climates in the north or the cooler climates in the south. And all of the Rieslings, it doesn't matter, even if they come from different vineyards, the same vineyard and different blocks on the vineyard, they make completely different wines. It's highly variable. But the thing that's interesting, I think, is that Denmark doesn't produce particularly good Rieslings. I haven't had a really good Riesling that's actually been grown in Denmark, and that's why we get our grapes from further north, because I think the Rieslings from the further north are so much better. There's some fabulous Rieslings that you get from Franklin, and but our grapes come from Mount Barker. There's some of the original vineyards that were planted many years ago had Riesling on them, and there's a beautiful softness about the Riesling. So often when I sort of reference New Zealand, South Island Rieslings, there's so much acidic linearity to the Riesling, whereas here it's more rounded, borrowing a bit from Jeff Grossett's geometry and Riesling theories. And I would see in this wine that sort of rounded, circular kind of flavor profile in the mid palate, particularly. Yeah.
What do you think about aging, Steve?
Pardon?
What's your thoughts on cellaring of this?
Well, it's our Rieslings generally. I mean, we're still selling 2013 Riesling, so I think Riesling you can just keep it, and it even significantly. Even
with this sort of soft, unctuous profile, you think that it's still
it'll change, Robert. It'll definitely change. If I was a buyer now, I'd drink this now.
Right. Okay.
I think it's great for drinking now.
We've already moved a fair chunk of it. I see we've got less than 2 dozen of it left on the site, which is a good problem to have. But $33, I think it's really delicious. Let's have a look now at the Chardonnay.
Okay.
So this is a James Suckling, or is it Halliday, 93?
It'll be Halliday.
Halliday, okay. It's certainly clean on the nose, gosh. I was reading that this is a barrel ferment. How long does it?
We do have some barrel ferment in this. This is the third reef, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. There's some barrel fermented wines here. We do quite a lot of barrel ferment, and then we'll blend it out accordingly, however it works.
I quite like it's clearly a medium-bodied Chardonnay, and it seems to draw inspiration from a sort of a fresh lightness as well as the barrel ferment. It seems to bring those two personalities into the glass, which is really quite skillful, Steve, because so often I see winemakers going in one of the two directions. Either they're going to go Chablis style or they're going the full Monty barrel ferment style. And here you've embraced both those ideologies.
We have tried to do that because we didn't want to make it. Well, I mean, generally. Well, let's back up a little bit. Denmark is exceptionally good for Chardonnay. Yeah, I think some of the Chardonnays that come out of the small producers here in Denmark are world class, and I would obviously include ourselves in that. But the key to it is to make something which is not overly flavored and overly oat, I think, and and just using different techniques and then coming up with something and blending it together at the end.
There's a great clarity to it, which I really love. I mean, in recent years, I've become sort of more than a little enamored with the Napa Chardonnays, and it's quite nice to taste something that's so contrasted to that. There's a clear purity about it. And the other thing that really gets me jazzed up with this wine is the price point. And again, I don't want to spend the whole night throwing hand grenades at Margaret River, but this at $35, it's a huge price point down from this similar quality 15 kilometers north.
I think it's Chardonnay is just such an interesting wine. This wine, because I often do the cellar door here down here, and sometimes you get people. Well, you get people. Oh, I love Chardonnay. I'm just going to try everything.
Chardonnay.
This is it. And then some people say, "Oh, I don't like Chardonnay. I'm not going to taste that." And I always say, "Well, you try it because you're in a cellar door. If you don't like it, just tip it out." Yeah,
I'm always inclined to tell people that it's a Semillon and wait for them to say they love it.
You could
before I tell them it's a Chardonnay. But that's just my contrabonus behavior.
But those people who won't taste it but then do, they say, "Oh my goodness, that's not like the Chardonnay that I used to have. That's a really nice wine."
Yeah.
I say, well, it's a really good drinking wine. It's not overly oaked. It's got plenty of flavour to it, and then they'll buy it, which they're shocked about. They just buy it. Yeah.
All right, moving on now to the Third Reef Cabernet.
Perfect.
Well, at this point, Steve, maybe you can describe for us or define for us the differences between Third Reef and single site.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. Whoa.
The nose is all right.
Pour myself a drink. Hang on.
I see you wearing a jacket. Is it that cold?
Yesterday was bitterly cold. I don't know what happened yesterday. It was, right. I mean, people were wearing, like skiing clothes. It was so cold here. I don't know why. It was, the temperature was 13 degrees, but it was bitterly cold.
Yeah.
We had to put the heaters on in the cellar door. This is Australia, and you think, oh God.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the difference between the tiers.
Yeah.
We have, effectively we'll have 5 tiers now because the video was about Nautica, and that's really the top tier. But we haven't got any of that for the tasting today. But the top level one, therefore, for what we're doing is the single site level. And that really is small batches of grapes, which we think are good quality. I mean, they'll be much more expensive to produce. And they will come generally from small blocks of grapes, which are just very high quality or high quality. And then the Third Reef ones will be more of may have some of those grapes in it, but generally they will have other good quality grapes. Generally, those will come from Mount Barker, whereas the single site ones and the Nautica ones would come from Franklin.
You know what I quite like about the phenolics of this Third Reef Cabernet. This is glass number 3. I'm struck by a little bit of this notion of dust, or like a brick dust kind of nuance on the nose, and it's quite impressive. I quite like how it sits as a contra to this incredibly rich sweet fruit. Yeah. So often, you get brilliant quality fruit, but somehow it becomes, to borrow one of Lou's sayings, you don't want to have more than a glass of it. Whereas with this, it has a certain additional dimension to it, certainly on the nose, that I think sets it apart from that sort of style.
Well, this was an interesting wine, Robert, because this won, I think, a gold medal at the West Australian Wine Show last year, which is like November. Okay, it's not too different. And the West Australian Wine Show this last one was interesting because, of course, with all the lockdowns,
yeah,
none of the judges could come. Not only they couldn't come internationally, but they couldn't come from the eastern states.
right.
So they had to get judges from West Australia, which was okay. But then, of course, what did they do? They get winemakers from Margaret River.
Yeah, it doesn't really help.
Yeah, but it didn't really help. And I said, oh, yeah, well, okay, we got a gold medal for the Cabernet.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the winemakers about it, and they said, that is amazing. Because the judges were
parochial as hell. Yeah,
from
yeah.
Margaret River.
Yeah.
And they must have done it, blind tasting.
Yeah.
And they selected us for the gold medal. I mean, it wasn't like they gave everybody a gold medal. They didn't. There were very few gold medals.
Well, so Colin's asking, is it all Cabernet, or is there some?
No, it's all Cabernet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that I love is in the mid palate, this sort of presence of glycerine. There's a beautiful fattiness about it that I really like. Very appealing. And then violets is another big one for me out of this. It's just well constructed.
It's a very popular wine that we sell.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the wines that we're doing tonight are popular. Yeah. But,
I can understand. I think this might be the first time. There's definitely not the first vintage that we've sold of yours, but it's the first time I've actually sat down and tasted it in a sort of serious context. I think it's delicious. I think it's really great. I just love that nose. It sets it apart from so many other Cabernets. All right, then the last of our third Reef is going to be the Shiraz.
Yep.
Same year. This was a monster seller for us last year.
Yeah, it's great.
Again, sitting at $36 a bottle.
Yeah, and this is the one that was 92.
Right.
Ray Jordan, I think.
Colin's asking about the aging regime. Is it different between? Oh, Colin, are you asking is it different between the single site and the 3 Reef, or just across the board? I'd say he's asking across the board, probably.
Aging
on that Cabernet.
Oh, I think you just keep going with that.
Yeah. I think the tannins
8 years, 10 years. I don't think there's a problem with aging with any of these reds.
Definitely with the Shiraz, there's an overt wildness about it that the Cabernet is not showing, which is quite delicious. It's quite great to go from the Cab to the Shiraz.
It's such a good wine, and this was an interesting wine because this is a little bit of a story, but we were approached by the Liquor Stores Association of West Australia to do something. They said, "Oh, we've never done this before. What we're going to do is we're going to choose 6 wineries in West Australia and ask them to submit one wine, and we're going to send this wine to the eastern states, to judges over there and here, and then we're going to do a Zoom thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to, and then we'll taste it." So I said, all right, well, I'll send the 3rd Reef Shiraz. So I sent them a couple of cases of 3rd Reef Shiraz. They sent it all over the place. These guys did the tasting. Well, and we were one of the 6 wineries in West Australia to be selected,
right?
Which that was really good, I thought, just to get that far. So anyway, we did the 3rd Reef Shiraz. And then when it came to the Zoom thing, I said we were not allowed. I was not allowed to be there for the other 5 wineries for the tasting that they did. I don't know what wines they did.
Right.
It didn't particularly matter. I don't think. But I was the 6th person. I was the 6th winery, and I thought, oh, well, they're going to kick me or something. I don't know. But then the panel said, oh, well, we've tasted all these wines, and this 3rd Reef Shiraz is one of the best wines we've had for a very long time. It's
outstanding.
I have 150 liquor stores that I buy wine for, and I want to take it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and that was this one. I thought I was astonished by it.
Well, there's a beautiful. I quite like the grippiness in the mid palate. The length is good. If I compare it to the 17, the length on the 17 was longer, but that might be a function of time because I think I had the 17 just a few months ago.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that it's gonna unfurl a little bit more.
It will do. Yeah.
In the next few months.
Yeah.
But I can see why the Liquor Store Association. What's this retail for in Australia?
Australian dollars, it's 30, sometimes 33.
Okay. Well, we're not far off at 36. Yeah.
Singapore and Australian dollars are about the same, aren't they?
Yeah, but we get nailed on the duty, the tax duty.
Yeah.
So we give away about $10 of what we're selling here already just to bring it in. There's a nice savouriness to it too.
You pay 40% tax.
What's that? Yeah, you do.
Yeah, theoretically.
So there's a question, barrel versus bottle. What do you want to know, Colin, about that? Maybe text me, mate.
Who's got it?
I'm not sure what he's asking there. He's probably asking how long does it stay in barrel and how long does it stay in bottle? Do you have a regimen?
Well, generally what we'll do is we'll have it at least, I don't know, 9-10 months in barrel.
In barrel, okay.
Yeah, and then what we try to do is, I mean, you want to keep it in bottle for at least 3 months or maybe 6 months. You really do.
Yeah.
So this will have been in bottle for over a year now.
Yeah, Mark, I think you're spot on about that Rhone-esque character of the Syrah. It's just great, right? It just differentiates straight off the bat. And what's really cool about it is the phenolics play into the palate in exactly that way. It's really delicious. And gosh, if this was Northern Rhone, I don't want to think what the price would be.
Yeah, I know.
Let's not even talk about it.
It's the big difference between Australian wines and...
Yeah. So onto the single sites, both 96 points from Halliday.
Drinking wines.
Oh, sorry, Steve. What is that?
No, as you know, Robert, Australian wines are made to drink, and so we do that. And the French make fabulous wines. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But there's a little bit about keeping it and then doing this, that, the other. But we make it when we bring it out. That's a good wine to drink. Yeah. It'll get better, but it's great.
It's interesting comparing the colours of the single sites to the third reef reds. There's the third reefs are sort of much brighter and more kind of glowing in the light tonight. It might be our fluorescent lights, but by comparison to the single sites, they're just bigger and more structured. So I dare say the palettes are going to show in the same way. It's going to be more about structure and less about fruit in comparing the single sites to the third reefs.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the single site wines are they're more complicated wines.
Yeah.
Because they are this small batch, relatively small batch. I mean, we only make a few, 2 or 3 pallets of it per year. We don't make very much of it.
Super interesting Cabernet, because there again you have
we're on the Cabernet now.
Yeah, we're on to the single site.
Hang on, wait a minute.
Sorry, mate. I hope I'm not.
Sorry.
I'm mindful that some people get divorced if we don't finish by 7:45.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah, I get warning signals.
All right, that's fine.
If they're not done by 8 o'clock, I pay the price.
All right. Okay. Well, I will be done. Right. Okay. Let me have some Cabernet.
Yeah, that Cabernet is for grown-ups. That's fantastic.
It's fabulous, that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story about that if you like.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know. Doing the cellar door is such an interesting experience because you just meet so many lovely people. Fascinating. So this group of students came in, and they were from Malaysia.
Right.
But there was like 10 of them or something, and they, being students, they went through the whole wine list. I mean, we have 20 wines on the wine list.
They worked all the way through. That's impressive.
Well, yeah. And what's the last wine? Single site Cabernet.
Uh-huh.
And they loved all the wines. And then they got to the single site Cabernet. And one guy said, "Oh, I really like that. I think I'll have a bottle." And then he said, "No, I think I'll have 2." And then the guy behind it said, "Oh, let me try that. Oh, I like that. I think I'll have a bottle."
Yeah.
So out of the 10 people, I sold 22 bottles of single site Cabernet to Malaysian students. I didn't sell any other wine. They bought 22 bottles.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and it was a big shock, but it just shows, that Asians just love it.
Yeah. Well, it's we can see that. I was just having a look at our stock holdings. We've only got 7 bottles left of both of these last 2 wines.
Oh, really? Oh, Lord.
It's definitely found its own mark all on its own.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see why with this Cabernet. It's a serious wine.
Yeah.
Carl, I would say, I don't know if you agree that this one's less about that green character, and it's more about the red fruit this time, and I think that's appealing. And then the tannins are beautiful. It's really finely detailed. It's really good.
Rob, there's something very floral on the nose. What's that?
I was wondering if it wasn't my the soap that I washed my hands with earlier, but that
it's very floral.
Yeah.
It's very violets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, but lovely.
Really beautiful. And it's something that I like the nuance of it. It's not overly complicated. But it has a very definite point of view. It's gorgeous. Well, that's I can see why it's the flavor du jour at the University of Kuala Lumpur today.
Yeah, I think it was the wealthy Malaysian students at the university.
Well, I'm so glad that you enjoy that, Steve, because I've got to tell you, I've been in the business a long time now, and one of the things I really don't like doing is pouring wine for drunk Australians on a bridezilla cruise around. There's nothing that I hate more when they stand at the desk and say, "So tell me about your wines," and I just think, "Oh no."
We have. I just have great fun at the cellar door.
You've definitely got the right personality. I'm crap.
They stay 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we'll talk about any subject on the planet, including Malaysian politics. You know.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
We don't talk about Singapore very often, but we do talk about Malaysia.
Mark's raised an interesting point about the mint that's evident in this Cabernet. There's this big debate that certainly at so many dinners that I've had with Lou in Singapore, where we drink Margaret River Cabernet, and everyone bangs on about the eucalypt evidence in the Cabernets out of Margaret River, and the debate's always about, is that an expression of those trees that grow around the vineyards, or is it something more complex than that?
No, it's the eucalypt.
Really? Okay.
You know, when you look at again the difference, say between one of the differences between Margaret River and Franklin. Franklin really has very few trees. I mean, it's rolling hills. It's generally, it used to be arable land, cattle farming, etc. And now it's got vineyards planted on the top, but there's hardly any trees. So there's no eucalypts. Whereas Margaret River has loads of trees, actually. And the eucalypt definitely tastes the wine.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the debate finally sorted.
But certain wines only. So here we have the Chardonnay and the Semillon and the Sauvignon Blanc. They don't get affected by the eucalypt.
Well, I'm thinking about wines like Howard Park, which for me always resonates eucalypt in its Cabernets. It just seems to be a defining thing.
Yeah, but they probably get that from Margaret River.
Yes,
I don't know where they get their
well, they're all over the shop, right?
Yeah, would come from Margaret River.
Yeah, I think they have 7.
Whereas most of their vineyards are in Mount Barker.
Yes.
Yeah, but that would be the Rieslings and stuff.
Right.
You know, so yes.
But really good.
Barker doesn't have that many trees either. I mean, some of the vineyards might be affected by the trees.
Yeah.
Not too many. Most of them, that central part is just no tree. Yeah.
And then on to the last one, the single site Syrah.
Yeah.
Same price point, 49 Sing. Beautiful color in the glass.
This is a fabulous wine.
Oh gosh, that's delicious,
isn't it? I mean, yeah. This wine has really come into its own.
So this is defined as a cool climate Shiraz, right?
Ah, yes. Ha.
I wanted to ask.
Yeah, but I think I'm probably only person on the planet who really dislikes the 2 words cool climate.
Yeah.
Because Australia is not actually cool climate. Denmark is cool climate, but not Franklin. Franklin is normal vineyard conditions. It's typical. It has hot days, in the 30s, and it has cool nights. That's typical, good grape growing conditions. Denmark, you can't ripen Shiraz down here.
Too cool.
So that, cool climate, we're cool climate here with the vineyards down here. Yeah. But we can grow fabulous Chardonnay and Pinot, the Sauvignon Blanc Semillon.
Well, do you think it's a fair argument that the definition of cool climate on the east coast of Australia is defined more by altitude than by land positioning? Because I'm thinking
I think it is. I think to a certain extent it is probably, but I think, as all of us who are on this call will know that Shiraz is the wine of Australia, really. Yep. But dominantly, that wine comes from the Barossa and South Australia, which has a very distinctive flavour to it.
Yeah.
Which is much more peppery, much stronger than this wine. And I think what people, you can get good Shirazes from Orange and places.
Yeah.
But they're not Barossa Shirazes. They're not that very heavy Shiraz.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't call, an Orange or a Hunter one cool climate.
No.
But I would say to it, that's a non-Barossa Shiraz.
That's actually a good way. I'm not sure the Barossa Winemakers Federation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the Barossa Winemakers Federation would enjoy that differentiation.
Probably not. They don't like it. No.
Yeah, because I think about Clare Shiraz, which is probably my sort of ocean island choice when it comes to Shiraz normally. Yeah. And that's hardly cool climate, but there's certainly a nuanced structure about Clare that you just don't get in Barossa.
To me, it's just what they call cool climate is actually this much more subtler, smoother, Shiraz, which is actually a much more easy drinking wine, I think, than the heavy Shirazes. I really like the heavy Shirazes, and it's great wine, but there's time and a place for that. I think that these other wines now are so much nicer for general drinking.
Yeah.
So,
well, Steve, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
You're very welcome. What time are we doing? Oh, we're nearly there.
We're at the end of it now. I wanted to see if anybody had any questions for Steve. And Lou, I know the answers to your traditional question. I've already researched it.
Are you stealing my thunder?
Yeah, I'm going to gazump you on it.
Oh, okay.
Steve, so Lou normally has a traditional question at the end of the night. What do you drink when you're not drinking your own wines? And your interview, I dug up an interview that you gave to a wine distributor in Australia a few years ago. So I know the answer, but maybe you want to share it with everybody.
Oh, God. Well, life changes. So I think it just depends on what you're feeling like, really.
Yeah.
We have an absolutely fabulous rosé, which I have absolutely no problem in drinking, at breakfast time. It's just amazing. You can drink it any time of the day. But if you want a really good warming wine, because it's so damn cold here at the moment, that Shiraz is fantastic. I wouldn't drink the rosé tonight, but I'd definitely have that single side.
Well, it was interesting because in the interview that I found on you, your answer was rosé because you just spent some time in Provence. Yes. And you were just developing your rosé line. And then your second one was tea, which I think is outstanding.
Tea. Yes, I do have tea generally in the morning because I'm English. And,
I don't think one can claim heritage to being English as you are without a predisposition to tea.
But the rosé is pretty special.
Oh, well, maybe we can get a look at that. What's it made from? What varietals are you using?
Well, that's the rosé. There's two rosés. There's the third Reef one or the single site. The single site one was made out of 100% Grenache, and it came from Franklin. But that's very much in short supply. We can't really do much of that. We've only got 16 cases left of that.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah,
we've made another one, but we couldn't get the Grenache, so we made it out of Zinfandel, and that'll be a 2021. And I've been through it with the winemakers, and I've told them it's not quite what I was thinking, but anyway, they said, well, it's not finished yet, and I said,
so a Zin's not going to reflect the Provençal style, is it? It's going to be okay.
Yeah, but that's more the problem with it. And as you rightly said, you know, I spent 3 weeks in Provence researching rosés, which is obviously a very difficult and time-consuming thing to have to do. And I hated it, obviously, but I did learn quite a lot. And when you try some of those Provence rosés, they're fantastic. And that's what I wanted us to do. And that we nearly got there with that Grenache rosé, but I think the Zinfandel one will be pretty good.
Well, that's interesting because I think my come to Jesus moment for Australian Zinfandel was Cape Mentel, maybe about a decade ago, and then I just haven't tasted any more since then. So no, I'm not sure how it's been.
Zinfandel is not really a very common grape.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, to make it into a rosé was okay.
Yeah.
You know, because it was picked young, you know, so that it had its more acidity left in it, and so it should have been okay for the rosé. So it was picked. It was picked like we do for the Grenache, for that Grenache rosé. But it's not what I would regard as a you know, fully fledged rosé. But let's see what they do. You know, the critics might think it's the best rosé they've ever tasted.
Then you're really in trouble because Australia's kind of obsessed with rosé, right? So then you're going
to. Right now it is, yes.
Yeah. So Tara's I actually thought it was me that was bullying her to buy your wines, but she mentioned that she's online tonight and she was at your cellar door and you bullied her into buying the rosé. And she
I didn't bully her into anything. She bought it because she wanted to buy it.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody bullies Tara ever.
It's a unique wine. I mean, there's nothing quite like it that I know of in Australia. So it's a wine. And when people try it and they just can't believe it.
Steve, I don't know if you remember Tara, but there's Tara and Alex. They've just put their video on.
Oh, yeah.
They're the guys who bought all your rosé.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because we didn't have the video on. Cheers. Yeah.
Anyway, Steve, thanks so much for joining us tonight. It's been terrific.
Excellent.
I hope we can see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Robert, yeah, whenever you want to do it, it's not a problem.
Thank you so much. It was really terrific.
We can do whatever you want to, whatever, you know, we can get together and it's good fun. You know, I can see you in front of your vineyard. It's lovely.
Yeah, well, I wish it was my vineyard.
No, it looks a bit autumnal to me.
Yeah, I'm going to claim ownership, though. I'm going to claim ownership.
Of course, why not? Yeah.
All right, thanks so much. Thank you, everybody. It's been a good tasting. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Good night.
Right.
Thanks, Dave.
Cheers.
Thanks,